I'll guarantee that.
We have a deal.
Alex Buzayanu has just struck a deal with British billionaire Peter Jones on the show Dragon's Den, the international version of Shark Tank. On this show, many unknown entrepreneurs have negotiated deals with successful businessmen to invest in their fledgling companies, but countless others have failed.
I can't invest, and that's why I'm out.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
So Andrew heads across the expanse of water that is the North Sea, back to Holland, empty-handed.
I've always wondered what makes a negotiator good. Many people think of negotiating as haggling.
Would you be prepared to move to 25%? Because
I would be prepared to stay at 30%.
But that's incomplete and misleading. When you negotiate, you start a discussion aimed at settling a matter. In other words, the negotiation starts when you meet the other side and say the first word. And because everything is a negotiation, from your next job and salary, to how much your next car will cost, and even what time your kids will sleep, it's important to learn how to negotiate well. At its core, negotiation is about arousing desire, making people want something.
Well, it's £20,000 was our turnover.
You've turned over £20,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
So being good at haggling isn't enough to make you a good negotiator, since so much of the negotiation occurs before the haggling starts. Even if you're the world's best haggler, you won't get your dream salary if you don't make the company want to hire you. If you want good negotiation outcomes, you need a few more things. The first is compelling logic. Before a real estate agent shows potential buyers a property, they identify the selling points of that property. Before lawyers negotiate, they spend hundreds of hours researching their client's case. It's surprising how often people forget they need a compelling argument to secure a favourable outcome.
What was the profit for there?
Oh, I don't know offhand.
What stops me from designing something similar?
We feel that...
What stops me?
Quick answer?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Many compelling arguments start from why.
Breezy revolutionized protection from outdoor air pollution, starting with the most vulnerable one, babies and young children. Half of the children in the UK live in areas where pollution exceeds the safe recommended levels. It sucks ambient air from one side, cleans it, and blows the clean air to the baby breathing area. The test showed that Breezy can clean the air by up to 80%.
Ideally, your audience should realize that the option you're presenting is the best option. For example, people selling products often explain what makes their product unique. In other words, the unique value proposition.
PureSweet is a company that focuses on bringing to market the highest quality sugar-free products while not compromising on taste and staying 100% natural. Our main product is PureSweet Zero, which is a natural sweetener that looks and tastes like sugar, but has 0 calories and harbors no bitter aftertaste like many other sweeteners do.
Sometimes, your counterpart isn't the only person that needs to be convinced. For example, your counterpart may be answerable to their boss, family, or business partners. Try to anticipate and address any concerns they may have. For example, in 2012, the US and China negotiated over Chen Guangcheng, a Chinese activist placed under house arrest. Rather than advocate for Chen's unconditional release, US diplomats struck a deal with their Chinese counterparts to allow Chen to travel to the United States, which Chen had publicly appealed for. This allowed the US to claim victory, while China could say it had treated Chen fairly. Usually, it's better to be less direct, immediately telling the company you're interviewing with how much you think you're worth may or may not be a good idea. However, explaining the problems you can solve and the value you can create is always a good idea. Compelling logic at the start makes things much smoother down the road. By showing how well prepared you are, you gain leverage, and people are also less likely to think that they can mislead you. But a compelling argument isn't enough.
But I don't think I'd want to put them in my mouth. I don't really know what I'm eating, what I'm doing here, and I think I can overcome that when it's a really big brand. But I'm just looking and I'm thinking, it's just not speaking to me. So as great as I think you are, this one isn't an investment for me, and I'm out.
You must also get your audience to feel the same way as you do. Here's how Levi Roots got a £50,000 investment in his company.
Put some music in my food for me and give me some reggae sauce. At reggae sauce.
When you think of charisma and personality, there could only be one name. Theopophetus. No. There could only be one name. Levi Roots.
It's so nice.
The song convinced the Dragons logically and emotionally that Levi's soup was a fantastic product. But even if you sing as terribly as I do, there is still hope. In many negotiations, stories can be devastatingly effective in bridging emotional gaps. Researchers from Yale and Berkeley conducted a study where they sent canvassers to engage 9,000 people at their homes in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. With some randomly selected households, the canvassers shared their personal immigration experience through a 15-minute conversation. With other randomly selected households, the canvassers spoke about a completely unrelated topic: the minimum wage. Households who heard stories about immigration had less exclusionary attitudes about immigration compared to those who had heard about the minimum wage, even after 3 months. Also, getting your audience to personally experience whatever you're selling can help with emotional alignment.
An average bricklayer will bend down 2,000 times to retrieve mortar alone.
Yeah, I feel that on my back already.
There you go.
Even with compelling logic and emotional alignment, you're not quite at the finish line. You need creativity to maximize the value that will be created by the deal. Because people will almost never completely agree with you.
I can't push that high. I can't push near that high. The absolute most I could go to is 20%. So if you take me on 20%, we have a deal.
Here, both sides negotiated only on one dimension: price. Price is a dimension where my win is your loss. In other words, a zero-sum game. And as polite as they were, they couldn't reach a deal. They may have reached a deal had they negotiated on other dimensions, such as in this case.
I tell you what I will do. I would offer you all of the money for 35%, and I would drop down to 25% when I receive my money back.
If we have a Kickstarter project that does reach above £200,000, would you be willing to go down to 20%? You would, in fact, guarantee that you would place that order?
I'll guarantee that.
We have a deal.
This is what Roger Fisher and William Ury call negotiating on principle and inventing options for mutual gain. Indeed, inventing options allows you to create value, so you can push for as much value as possible. If you think carefully about each side's underlying interests, you can even overcome seemingly irreconcilable differences. In 1967, Israel invaded Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. On the grounds of national sovereignty, Egypt refused any deal that didn't return the whole of the Sinai Peninsula. On the other hand, Israel wanted to keep enough territory for its own security. However, in 1978, they struck a deal that met both sides' needs. Egypt would get to keep the whole of the Sinai Peninsula, but much of it would be demilitarized. So if you have compelling logic which others can see, and can maximize value creation, Will you definitely be a good negotiator? The answer, unfortunately, is no. Let's look at how horribly wrong things can go.
Alex, tell me exactly what is the problem you had with your Spanish supplier? Explain it.
Have you ever dealt with the Spanish?
Never.
Right. Well, is anyone Spanish here? Dishonesty.
But it's not enough to simply not insult other people. To get the best outcomes, you must make people like you. Humor is a universal currency of likability.
Bristler matches those with beards to those who want to stroke beards.
Oh.
Don't worry, it gets better, it's fine.
And so is humility.
Yeah, I think
In my
if you change-
understanding.
Yeah, I think you're not as protected as you probably think.
Right.
And I share Tage's concerns.
I've got it there if you want to have a look.
I
and
wouldn't
see
mind
what,
just having it. I wouldn't mind understanding what, because you feel very confident about your protection.
If I'm wrong, I'm
Don't
wrong.
worry.
Yeah, Jim, I'd like to put it right.
I want to be really. I want to be clear on what you've got. So.
Yeah. You're the expert.
Kudos to this guy, who respectfully maintains his stand without insulting the dragons. They make him offers even though they don't agree on a fundamental point. People are less likely to behave unreasonably if they like you. And that's why there are many other techniques worth learning, especially this.
First of all, thank you very much for your proposals, which are great. Really, honestly, beyond my expectations, being this horrible guy. And
I didn't say horrible, did I?
Yes, you
well,
did
you
actually
did.
say horrible.
Oh, I take it back. You seem really nice.
You took it a bit to the extreme. Anyway.
This is what author Chris Voss calls mirroring. The entrepreneur politely repeats what Peter Jones said, showing that he has been listening to Jones. It incidentally gives Jones the opportunity to reflect on what he said. Making people feel heard can work wonders. In 2005, Roy Disney sued Disney CEO Bob Iger, saying that Iger had unfairly installed himself as CEO. Rather than fight the lawsuit, Iger met with Roy Disney. Iger agreed to make Roy director emeritus of the Disney company and give him a consulting contract. In exchange, Roy Disney dropped his suit. By making Roy feel heard, Iger gracefully resolved a major distraction that could have lasted for years. Watching a good negotiator can feel like watching a magic show. Some of the best negotiations have little or no haggling. But there's no magic behind it. At its core, negotiation is about arousing desire. And people will want things when there's compelling logic, can feel the same way as you do, get as much value as they can, and like the person that is selling it. When you have all these things, discussions can go very smoothly. But when you don't, things will fail more often than you imagine.